Hi, my name is Linda Ehlers from Great Glass Galore, and today I'm going to teach you how to cut. So we're going to go through 3 different cutting techniques when we cut. So I'm going to start with simple straight edge cuts, and then I'm going to go to simple curves, and then we're going to go to harder curves. So these are called pattern pieces, and what we use these for is we use these to trace on the glass. So like we showed you in the first video, you're going to cut up transparencies to transfer your pattern to your glass. That's what we're doing here. We're taking this pattern piece and we're laying it on the glass. We're cutting on the smooth side of the glass. So this sample glass I give you is called glue chip. So you should be able to tell the difference. This is really obvious, which is textured and which is smooth. When you pick a glass and you're not sure which side is smooth, then you pick the shinier side. So we're going to actually start by tracing this on the glass. So as I trace this, I'm tracing with a black Staedtler fine waterproof marking pen. The marking pen doesn't wash off very easily when you grind, so that's what's nice about this marker. As I draw this piece, I'm drawing around the outside of the pattern, so that means the marker is actually making the piece I want to save too big. So I want to try and cut that marker away from the rest of the glass so that when I finish my finished glass piece, there's no marker left. So I'm going to start showing you first with your basic carbide cutter. Okay, so this has a carbide wheel at the end, this round little wheel. You'll see similar cutters like this, but they possibly could be steel wheel. Usually the steel wheel will have a bigger circle. And this one, my tape is covering it, but there's a silver band below the gold. That usually means it is carbide. So when you're doing stained glass, you want to try and stick to carbide wheels. The steel wheels are great for simple picture frame clear glass, but not so good when you get to opaque glasses that are denser. The other advantage of this carbide wheel is, again, it's smaller in diameter, so it lets you go around curves a little easier. So you don't want to cut dry, you actually want to dip in oil. So I've got a jar here, a glass jar here with a sponge in the bottom, and it's got cutting oil in the sponge. So I'm going to just dip that in the sponge so the cutter gets oiled. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start by putting this round ball in the center of my palm, and I'm going to put my index finger in this indent on the same side as this cutting head. So the tines face down and my fingernails on the same side as the round cutting head. And I'm going to break my wrist so that I'm holding the cutter straight up. So your goal is to hold the cutter straight up to get more pressure, a better score. You don't want to tip it side to side, and you don't want to tip it front to back. And I need to score the glass and tell the glass where to break from one edge to the other. So I don't just want to score this line. I want to start back at one edge and go to the other. So I'm going to start close to my body and push away, and I'm going to watch this round head here so I can see where it's scoring. So I'm cutting with my dominant hand, my right hand, but my left hand, I like to put the thumb behind it to help guide it, and the fingers beside it to hold the glass still. Okay, I have really flexible fingers and stretchy ligaments, so I can do this. You may not be able to. You might just be able to put your thumb behind it. So I'm going to start back at the edge. You want to hear this scratchy noise. And I'm cutting to the inside of this black line. And there we go. I cut from one edge to the other. Now I need to break that. I'm going to use what's called running pliers. Okay, so there's a top and the bottom to these pliers. The top has a line on it. I actually drew in the line so you could see it a little bit better. But if you look at the lips, the top is curved and the bottom is curved this way. So I'm going to put that line. I want to line that line up directly with the score. So I'm going to just line it up with the score there. I want to get both outside edges of the plier on the glass, and then I'm just going to press this end together. Okay, so relatively easy. I'll dip my cutter again. It's good to dip your cutter every other shortcut, or get used to putting it back in the jar. Okay, now if you look at this, you can see that I've got still have black here and black in this corner, and this I would need to grind off, go over to the grinder and grind that off before that piece is ready to fit into my jig and with my glass pieces. Okay, so let's go on to the next easy cut. I'm actually going to do a drawing first of this easy cut to try and explain what is going on with the glass. Okay, so glass likes to break in a straight line. Okay, So really, I'm going to start you off with the easy curve first. So we're going to start, again, you need to score from one edge to the other. So I'm going to come around here. I can't actually score over to here. The glass won't break that way. It's too curved. It wants to break in a straight line. So I'm going to make this line look relatively straight by coming off maybe halfway to 2/3. And then I can cut the rest off. Okay. So now this inside curve is trickier. The tricky part about this is, let me start over on this side. Okay. Is if I started on my glass edge and I came in and I did this, then the glass again would try and break this way and I would lose my piece. So really what you want to do is somehow make all your curves look shallow and straight. So the first step in doing that is to get rid of all the excess on the outside of your curve. So if you look at this curve, this is one outside point, this is another outside point. First we're going to cut straight across and get rid of all this glass. Okay. The next step is this is still too deep. This is still too curved. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to draw a line parallel to this first straight line, about 3/8 of an inch down. And this distance here is the 3/8. This can vary. It can be 1/4 inch. This can be 1/2 inch. This can be an inch. It'll all depend on how easily your glass breaks. Cathedral, which are see-through glasses, break a lot easier than opaque glasses. So opaque glasses, you have to be more conservative. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to work my two edges. So I'm going to work at this C curve and try and get rid of some of it. So I'm going to come down, make a nice curve, come up and make a nice curve. Okay? So now if you look at, instead of this big C curve, I have a shallower C curve. So this is much shallower. So I'm going to break that out next. And then the second one, I'll be able to break this out. Okay? So again, these depths, however deep your piece is, you want to go down about 3/8 of an inch and keep going down. Okay? So now I'll show you. Okay, so we'll trace this. And I call this the inside of the C curve, and then there's the outside of the C curve. I usually like to cut the inside of the C curve first. I'll tell you why in a minute. But I'm going to have you practice on the outside C curve. So if you're following along, do the outside first. Just get used to cutting that outside curve. Okay? So again, we probably can't make the glass won't break all the way around. There are some tricks to doing that. You have to have a little more experience in the field of how the glass breaks. So as a beginner, I want you to start on this edge. You need to go to another edge, come around and score off there. And that looks like a relatively slightly curved line. So again, I'm trying to cut off my black line on the pattern piece and go all the way over there. Okay. Now I'm going to break this. A lot of mistakes people make are the pliers are half on and half off the glass. You don't want to do that. You want them both on the glass. So move your pliers in a little further so the two outside edges of the plier are on the glass. Break it. It didn't break all the way. That happens too. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to break the rest of it. Okay. Now I can score the rest of it. Again, try and put both outside edges of the plier on the glass and break that. So now I'm going back to here. The first step I said earlier was to go straight across, so I'm going to score straight across. Okay. And now I'm going to come, about down to here, halfway. So I'm going to come down, across and up. Obviously my sample is really small. I'm working with 3 by 3 inch pieces of glass, but this is just, you could probably do this as one score without taking it in 2 chunks, but I'm trying to get used to going down a certain depth to make your curve look shallow. Okay, so now I'm going to just switch cutters. This is the next most popular cutter, is really the pistol grip. If you do have wrist problems, this is kind of hard on some people to break their wrist. Again, I have flexible ligaments and stretchy ligaments, and my wrist just goes down really easily. This is one good for the wrist. You can hold it like this. You can put your finger in front. You can put your thumb over the top. I just like to grip it like this. And again, I'm going to score around the edge here. Now, your running pliers are not going to fit on here. That outside edge isn't on there. So sometimes this first inside curve will work with the running pliers, but usually you have to go to grosing pliers. So there's a flat bottom and a curved top. And I like to use the curved on the curved top when I'm doing curves. If I'm using the grosing pliers for straight edges, then I flip it over and I use the flat side. But for these inside curves, I'm going to use the curved side up, this curved side up, okay? So I'm trying to create 2 pressure points on each side of the score. So the running plier, that's what the running pliers were doing. So if I go to it on a side, let me try to show you. If I were to break this with my hand, I'm going to create a pressure point here on this side of the score and a pressure point here. So I'm creating 2 pressure points, and I'm going to make an upside down V with the glass. Well, that's exactly what the running pliers are doing. If you look at that mouth, it hits here and here. So it's creating those 2 pressure points for you. So if I scored this and I put the running pliers on it and broke it, it's like I'm putting my hand here and here. It's doing the same exact thing. So that's what we're trying to do with the grosing pliers. So we're trying to put pressure on one side so the hand can't get in there and the running pliers can't get in there. We got to go to the grosing pliers and put a pressure point on one side of the score really close. It works better if you're really close than further away. So if I put my thumb out here, it doesn't work too well. But if I put my thumb and index finger really close and do that upside down V, it works really well. Okay? And then we're going to take that last part out. Okay? Okay? So now we're going to go to the next curve, and the thing I forgot is a bench brush. Let me grab one of those. So as you cut, you'll see little shards of glass on there, and you want to clean those out of the way, because I don't want to put a piece of glass on top of here and try and cut it. It could crack, so I'm going to brush that glass out of the way. So now we're going to the pointy curve pattern. So again, I have my outside C curve and my inside C curve. Okay, and I like to cut the inside curve first. The reason for that is if I cut this first, I have all this glass still there that I haven't cut away surrounding this point and this point. So that helps save your points. The next thing is if you're likely to crack anything or break anything from not scoring hard enough, or the glass is brittle, or it's going to be your inside curve's going to break. So you might as well do the inside curve first. So if you screw it up, you haven't wasted your time on the outside curve. So going back to the last step, the last practice piece, the easier curves, we've started by cutting point to point on the line. So we're going to cut that away first. And then again, we're going to work down about 3/8 of an inch and up 3/8 of an inch. And the mistake, one of the other mistakes my beginners make is they don't eat away this and they don't eat away this part of their pattern. So what happens is if they do a cut like this, it doesn't work. They've done no work. All your work is in getting rid of this and getting rid of this so that you make this C curve shallower. Okay, so you don't want to do that. So again, we've worked down our 3/8 of an inch. Now the next problem we run into is if this length of this is greater than 2 inches, so if you look at this, and it's greater than 2 inches, these grosing pliers don't work that well when it gets beyond 2 inches. Because what happens is the glass starts breaking, the score you made starts breaking from where the tool is hitting the glass. And the further the score starts breaking away from the tool, it can veer off. It puts a lot more stress on the glass. So what you want to do is now take this long chunk and divide it into 2-inch increments. So if you're doing a bigger pattern that's maybe 8 inches, you might have to divide it into 4 chunks. But this one we're going to divide into 2 chunks. So we're going to do this chunk and then this chunk. Again, eating away at the outside edges. And then the same with this next one. Maybe this is like 3 inches. So I'm going to maybe do a 2-inch and a 1-inch, okay? And then we're going to do the outside of the glass. So let's go back to this. And as an aside, you'll probably notice I'm missing half my thumb, and that happened when I was a year old in an accident. It did not happen in a glass accident. A lot of students ask me about that. So I just like to make sure you know it wasn't from glass. So first cut is point to point on the curve. Okay. And then the next step is to work down into 2-inch increments. And again, this is a small sample, but it gives you the idea of you have to worry about your depth and your length. Okay. So another problem beginners have is they come around and they flip the cutter out, and as soon as you've tipped this cutter over, the cutting head comes up, doesn't score. So you have to make sure this is straight up and down all the way around. If you have trouble with that, one thing is keep your elbow into your right side, okay, and start on your right hip and rotate to your left hip. And that's if you're right-handed. Obviously, if you're left-handed, you do the opposite. So I'm going to start on my right hip with my elbow in by my side, and then I'm going to rotate to the right hip. And again, you'll get more pressure if your shoulder is over the glass versus if you're standing back here. So if you kind of want to get over there and look at that little cutting head. The other thing I've seen is I'm about 5'4". If you're a little shorter than that, or if you're 5 feet, 4'8", 4'10", you might want to stand on a little step stool at first to get yourself over the glass. And usually after 1 or 2 weeks of cutting after your first project, you usually gain your strength where you don't have to keep standing on that stool. But it gets you going initially if you don't hear that scratchy noise as you're cutting. So now we're back to this. So again, I'm going to use the rosin pliers with the curved side up. Put the tool on one side near the line and my hand on the other. Do that upside down V. Okay, we'll get the rest of this. Again, I'm making sure I eat away the edges of that inside C curve. Okay, and then the next one we'll do maybe 1, 2. Again, I could probably do it all at once. It's just the practice of the curves and dividing it up into sections. I usually like to throw my glass off to the side or in a wastebasket. Then I don't get so many chips underneath, so I don't have to wipe it quite so often. Let me wipe this again. Okay, so there's my inside curve. Now I'm going to do that outside curve. And again, I don't want to come all the way around. It's really hard on the glass. It won't break all the way around. You could lose a tip. So I'm going to come about 2/3 around to there, okay? And this cutter has oil in the head, so that's why I'm not dipping it. So in this case, I have 2 options of where to break it. I can use the running pliers from this end, or I can use the running pliers from this end. You actually want to use the running pliers from the pointy end. And the reason for that is, again, the score will start breaking or running where the tool is hitting the glass. So if I use the tool here, all the score has to do is jump back that little 1/4 of an inch to complete. If I break it from here, it has to start running here, and then you don't know what it's going to do. It might try and stay straight, it might break the tip because of the pressure going around. So I'm going to actually break it from this end. Okay. And then we'll break it from that end. Okay, so as you can see, this is a little rough, especially where that little point is where you broke it into 2. Usually you have to grind that off, and I'm going to need to grind all that black off. You can also groze pieces off, so you can take your grozers and try and chip little pieces away. Okay, so we'll go over grinding in the next video. So as for tools, again, we've got the Staedtler black waterproof pen. We've got running pliers. I like the regular size running pliers. They make a miniature pair, so they make a small pair. Again, the lips aren't as wide, so they don't work quite as well. Also, there's a pair that's plastic. You can't You can't use the screw. I'll show you how to use that in the middle. The plastic ones don't have a screw. They're also plastic, so they flex sometimes before breaking the glass. So if you're trying to score something really long, the plastic ones won't do it. Okay. So the other nice thing about these running pliers is normally the lips are open, maybe a 1/16 to an 1/8 of an inch, this opening right here. But say you are going to score something that's really narrow, that's narrower than the lips. Okay, so if I do that, it may not break because, again, I don't have both outside edges of the plier on the glass. But what I can do is I can use this screw to screw the lips shut. So now they're totally shut. So instead of the tool, the running pliers, hitting the glass out here and here, it's bringing it closer into the center point. So now I can actually break something that narrow with these pliers, which is great. Okay. And but most of the time I want them open a little. If I do a regular cut and they're not open a little bit, they tend to chip the sides of the glass. Okay. So the other thing I'm using is fan out rosin pliers. I like these the best. They're nice and pointy on the tip. But I also have choice rosin pliers. They work really well too. The fan out green pair will cost you 3 times the amount. That's why I kind of, as the blue pairs, that's why I kind of offer both. But I really like, I think the point on this is a little pointier. It's better for what I use it for, which is inside curves. Okay. So again, we've got your basic carbide cutter. This will last 25 times as long as a steel wheel. That's why you really want a carbide cutter. But once this head gets dull, you throw it out. You also have to dip it in the oil. All the other cutters I've got, you don't have to dip. So if you look at these 2 cutters, or I call them pencil cutters, they're straight on. So you can do the same thing, center of your palm, over the top, and bend your wrist. They just get longer, and you feel like your hand is further away. Some people with bigger hands like these longer cutters better than the shorter one. So I have 2 styles. I have the Choice and the Toyo. I carry the Choice because it's a really nice, inexpensive carbide cutter. Okay, so any of these, you're probably asking, well, why don't you cut it like you're holding a pencil? Well, this is really difficult. You have to have really good grip strength and finger strength in order to hold it this way. So most people can't hold it this way. I do have carpenters usually are strong enough. I had one lady who put on eyelashes for a living that really did a great job with this, holding the cutter this way. But really, it's over the top, finger in the indent, press with your hand and your finger. Okay, these carry, the other 2 carry oil. So I've got the 2 different kinds of pistol grip. This is the Fletcher pistol grip. It has oil in this felt area, so you won't see oil in this back part. Most people really like this one because the cutting head is right in front, so you can see it as you move it along. It also the head doesn't wiggle. Toyo brands, the head kind of wiggles. I mean, once you get it down and get used to it, it won't bother you. But the head is not in front. There's a slot there, so you have to get used to following that slot. Okay. The other thing is this does carry oil in this area. It tends to leak out of this screw, so you just don't want to overfill. So when you lie it down, it doesn't hit the screw. When you're holding it up, all that oil goes into the front. Okay. So then I have some more unique cutters. This is another Toyo cutter. It's got this L added onto it. So instead of over the top, the problem with over the top is you have nerves that run up through your wrist that can really bother you. So instead of over the top, you use this L to put between your thumb and index finger. And this is a nice meaty part of your palm, and you don't have those nerves running there. You have to get used to this turning. So you're going to be cutting like this. Again, the cutter is straight up. Okay, so there's that one. Some people really either like this or really don't, because part of it is your pressure on the head is behind the head instead of over the head. So you can try that one. And then we've got this other one. Again, this is the same thing. You could put it in this meaty part of your palm, but it's really short, so it's a little hard to do. So instead, you put it between your middle fingers and you use it this way, and it works pretty well. Okay, so that's the cutting video. I'm trying to think of anything else that might go wrong. Most people, the problem is they're leaning over. If you lean over too far, you can't even see the cutting head, or they're leaning too far back. And especially with this cutter, if you lean too far back, it hits on the tines and the head comes right up. So you really have to have your cutter really straight up. And then, like I said, on the curves, people tend to turn out. You have to keep it up straight the whole time. Okay. So I think that's it for the cutting video, and the next video is going to go on. I'm going to start cutting the project, and you can actually see how big pieces get cut.